Hey everybody, how's it going? Back at you after 2 weeks. We ran into a bunch of scheduling issues. I was in the lab all week, and then Corstian had some family over and friends over, so we weren't able to find a common time to meet. So we decided to give you guys a little bit of a break from the NFL concept. We're coming right back at you. I don't know about you, Corstian, but I just got hit with a massive storm
Mhm.
Sunday night. Monday
Yeah.
morning, I woke up and I just see trees right outside my apartment door and window. I was completely blocked off, dude.
Oh
It
shoot.
was scary.
Uh-huh.
And there were like dozens of branches on my roof, like going from like ground up. It covered my neighbor's door, it covered my door. It took them a whole afternoon to get it out. But yeah, I was trapped and now I'm not. So I feel like a free bird today.
Yeah.
Um, I'm so thankful the only damage that was done was the gutter. The roof is fine, sidings are fine, but
Mhm.
I assume you had a much better weekend than I did.
Yeah, not quite as dangerous to me. Yeah, I just had normal Father's Day weekend. I made some pizza for my family, kind of chill.
Yeah, your dad's a big pizza guy.
Yeah, he likes pizza. So,
My dad's like he's good. He loves nuts,
mhm.
like and peanuts, cashews, like almonds, anything like that. So, um, not the most extravagant gift in the world that my brother and I provided, but we knew that was meaningful. So,
Mhm.
gave him that. Um, definitely planning something fun for his birthday and Father's Day weekend coming up. But we hope you all enjoyed Father's Day weekend last weekend, and now we'll talk about the AFC East. So, um, starting with the Buffalo Bills, they had a roller coaster of a season last year, and I remember on this podcast telling people, have patience in the Bills. They're going to turn it around. They're going to turn it around. They are not missing the playoffs. That's the one bet to make on there. And lo and behold, they win the division last week of the season and fall again to Kansas City, but this time at home. So made wholesale changes. They traded Stephon Diggs. Corstian, how are you looking at this team given their depth chart and given their schedule?
um, yeah. Overall, I'm still pretty confident that this team can be, a strong playoff contender this upcoming season. I feel like a lot of people, like you said, will bring up the Stephon Diggs trade. And obviously, he was a huge part of this offense, but I think with the offensive coordinator changes, he wasn't as vocal of a point, or at least he wasn't as big of a part of the game plan. Um, and so I don't think the receiving game will take as much of a hit as a lot of people might expect. And so, like, I think that it'll be down a little bit because obviously Diggs is Diggs, but I think they addressed it with a couple additions. I think Dalton Kincaid, he continues his upward trajectory, and so for like a floor of theirs, I still have them at like 10 wins as kind of like a floor for me, and then probably like a ceiling of about 13 wins. Yeah. So from 10 to 13 wins is kind of the range that I think, and they could probably fall anywhere under that.
Yeah, well, given that they finished first in the division, they have week 2 through 6 is going to be rough for them
Mm-hmm.
because they got the Dolphins, Jaguars, Ravens, Texans, and the Jets in that
Mm-hmm.
5 week span all at once. So that's going to be a rough part of their schedule. Um, and then, like in November 3rd and November 17th, they're facing the Dolphins and the Chiefs and the Colts. So that's another 3 game stretch. If they're able to split 500 out of those like 8 games, like in the months of like September, October, and November, I feel confident that this team could make it to the playoffs. So um, it's going to be it's a very difficult schedule, but I can't see how this Buffalo team doesn't finish off the year with like double digit wins. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm in agreement with you. I'm probably I'm gonna say they're like gonna finish around like 9 to 12 wins
Mm-hmm.
for me, even though I feel very confident they're gonna hit the double digit end of that because the competition is fierce and a lot of these teams they're facing are tailor made to like take away like your best options. And I think having Diggs was like a big focal point. Where like even if you did have like a elite cornerback, he still had the capabilities to beat that. I don't know
Mhm.
if you have that on this team on that level yet. I
Mhm.
really love Dalton Kincaid. I love the Keon Coleman pick. I love Khalil Shakir, his talents, but I don't think they're on that level that Diggs is on yet. And
Mhm.
I'm very high on Kincaid at that. So um, it will really depend on how well Josh Allen plays complementary ball without Diggs. Um, that's why I put them on like the lower end of what we're probably used to seeing from Buffalo. But I still have 12 wins as their ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah, and my only reason of being a little bit more confident is just the fact that towards the end of the season, if we didn't see, Diggs' presence is always a benefit to the team, but just like he didn't necessarily get the looks or as many looks as you'd hope for, especially with the way he was playing early on in the season, and obviously how he's played in the past. And so I think that if they're able to continue, not or playing to that same level where they're not reliant on a top tier caliber receiver, then granted, our predictions aren't that far off anyway, so like it's not too big of a thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm more scared off by like their opponents they're facing right now. This is more of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh wow. In their schedule, they had the Dolphins, Jaguars, Ravens, Texans, Jets,
Mm-hmm.
Dolphins again, Colts, which I think are going to have a really good season, Chiefs, 49ers, Lions, and then Jets, second to last game of the season. And I'm just like, whoa, whoa, that is a stacked schedule. It is not going to be easy, but um, I think to this point they're battle tested. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if their 6-win game streak at the very end wasn't any indication, they're well equipped to get into the playoffs here. So transitioning to free agency, um, a couple of my favorite moves just going through here and scrolling down the list. Um, a lot of it was focused on like the offensive and defensive lines. I really like the fact that they got Nick Morrow,
Mm-hmm.
linebacker, and he's not going to be a noteworthy signing, but I just think with that move, it signifies like how much it hurt them to lose Matt Milano during the middle of the season, and then
Mm-hmm.
like Tremaine Edmonds, and the fact that the rookie linebackers played so up to par, but now you have to plan for like, oh, if you run into another Matt Milano injury, what does that look like? Nick Morrow is a solid, disciplined player who's going to really thrive um, in Sean McDermott's scheme. I think in Philadelphia, he's kind of like miscast because he had a breakout season on the Bears,
Mm-hmm.
and Philadelphia's like, breakout players, let's chase them. And he wasn't necessarily used properly, even though he's a talented player. So I think he's going to have a rebound season. And I really like that move from the depth perspective, given that like what Buffalo had to deal with last year. And then
Mm-hmm.
another one of the signings I really liked um, was Teron Johnson. Johnson was a really good corner for them last year, and I think it was important for them to sign him in particular.
Yeah, Morrow was another. Yeah, like you said, Morrow was the guy I also was pretty excited for. Yeah, it was kind of tricky too. I think this offseason I would have liked to seen them push for maybe another edge rusher that could like mix in a little bit better. But I know, like in the free agency pool, it wasn't super deep, and they obviously had other needs that we wanted to see them address before edge rusher. So it was kind of a tricky situation. But overall, yeah, I do like that Nick Morrow. I think he, like you said, will be a really solid piece. At least not especially not needing to be that like the guy on defense, but just being a solid just linebacker that does his job and kind of keeps the defense afloat and is able to make plays if needed.
I think the other key guy they had to resign was Taylor Rapp because
Mm-hmm.
look at both like Poyer and Hyde, they're gone. They're
Mm-hmm.
gone, and they were like a big focal point of that secondary. And you had to sign Rapp, and I don't really think there'll be too much of a drop off in their safeties because of the moves they made here.
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple of moves where it doesn't like they're not like eye popping signings, but they're important signings for a good team, and I think they can at least maintain the consistency that they've been on. So I like the moves. They've been pretty low key, and in particular for losing all the talent that they've had, this is a good job by Buffalo. Um,
Yeah, in my little notes thing there, I have like all
yeah,
the
go
key
ahead.
losses that they had,
Yeah,
and it's a scary bunch of guys to lose. And so like all things considered, I think it's impressive how good they still look. I mean, like they lose Leonard Floyd, he's a solid guy to have at the pass rush spot. You lose both your two main receivers with Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs, and then on the defensive side you lose Dane Jackson, Tre'Davious White, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, and you're thinking like, how can this team function? But then I guess just we see how good the secondary was or I guess the depth that this team had. Um, yeah, just surprisingly, just because it seemed like everybody's gone. But then I feel like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer has been in and out of injury quite a bit, and obviously Tre'Davious White with injury as well. But yeah.
yeah, and they still have Benford and Douglas, and then as well
Mm-hmm.
as like Elam. They want to give Elam like more opportunities. So
Mm-hmm.
I think they're still okay there. And then if you just have Teron Johnson like manning the nickel, you still have a lot of depth there.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried. But
Mm-hmm.
it's like there better not be a drop off in the defense now.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, no matter what you do as far as offense changes, it's not
Mm-hmm.
going to matter. Um, let's pivot to the draft because I think their draft was a lot more exciting
Mm-hmm.
to like look at with players. So like they start off with one of my favorite receivers in the draft, Keon Coleman. I love this fit for Buffalo. A lot of teams, I mean, a lot of fans were like, "Oh, why would you just trade Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs, basically?" And I kind of reacted that way because someone was like, "Whoa, that's like a perfect fit for the Chiefs." But honestly, I think Buffalo got the more well-rounded receiver for what they asked if you're just looking at a
Mm-hmm.
back from the skill sets. Like Xavier Worthy makes sense for the Chiefs. And like honestly, even if Buffalo stayed at where it's at, like the Chiefs probably still could have got a really good wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
There's just was so many wide receivers in
Mm-hmm.
the draft that if they just picked one of them, it was more likely that they were
Mm-hmm.
gonna land a good one. Like they could have picked a lad at like 32 and then be like,
Yeah.
oh, why the heck? Well, we like they could have gone anywhere with that. So I think for what Buffalo's asking other receivers, Keon Coleman brings something different to what
Mm-hmm.
Shakir could do with route running, and then what Curtis Samuel could do as far as like a schemed up player. This guy is a guy that can win the 50-50 balls. He can develop into a primary X receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that Buffalo does not have now with losing Stephon Diggs. And they tried to make Davis that, but it was clear that Davis was another scheme type player. Excuse me, having all the hiccups today.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love that pick in the second round for them. That was sorry. Yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
picked him in the second round. So that was a great
Mm-hmm.
selection for them. And then yeah, and again, like a lot of their free agency signings, not anything noteworthy, but like guys that are going to help them out. So you saw them address the other safety position. Cole Bishop was a great addition. And then they just hammered the offensive line, hammered the defensive line, picked Ray Davis out of Kentucky. That's pretty much it. Like great job by this team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was fun. They had a lot of picks to go through, and so I think that's what added to kind of some of the fun factor of this draft. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Keon Coleman, obviously. Wide receiver was, I think, everybody's prediction for their first pick with just the key losses they had. Obviously, they brought in Curtis Samuel and Matt Collins over. But, it's like they're very much, you kind of got to scheme them, or you scheme specific plays for them kind of dudes. And so having Keon Coleman, I think he's a solid, well-rounded guy. And obviously, I'm a huge fan of Shakir as well. And so I don't know. They have a lot of guys in this receiving room that can be schemed to be successful. And so I think that's really exciting. But I was also pretty excited about the draft pick Ray Davis, the running back that they got. I think he can complement James Cook pretty nicely, and so I don't know, just kind of like an underrated draft pick that I think a lot of the running backs are kind of underrated this draft, and so he's
Yeah,
just a guy that I
100%.
think can. He's probably. I mean, just with the way the Bills are built, I don't necessarily foresee him to be, a guy that's putting up those like 700 rush yards with a handful, like a ton of touchdowns just out of like the backup position. But I think that we'll see a lot of solid plays that surprise a lot of people and just kind of come out of nowhere where he can break a play, or he can make a guy miss where maybe a lot of people don't expect it, especially just with him being.
He's like going to put up 50 yards in a random game, and just like, who is this guy? He's going to have like one of those like breakaway runs for like 30, 20 yards, and it's just like, whoa. He's going to give you that like Jalen Warren energy, but not like not to the extent that Jalen Warren's performing last season.
Yeah,
he's gonna be like a little lightning punch, which is nice to have on the team. Do you expect it to be like a 70-30 backfield then? That kind of like that's kind of the vibe I got from what you were describing here.
Yeah, maybe around 70-30, maybe like a 65-35. Again, it's really close in that prediction that you had there.
I'm not trying to be exact here with the question. I was just trying to help the audience see your perspective on like, you don't think it's gonna be like a split backfield where you're worried about like James Cook like not being like an RB1 or RB2 most games. Like it's he's still gonna be James Cook from like last season. But like it's like, oh, keep an eye on Ray Davis. That's more kind of like what you're saying, because he could definitely take people by surprise.
Yeah, and it's like James Cook, he accepts around season, so that especially you'll get those huge breakout plays that I feel like everybody's kind of used to seeing with.
Yeah. Sorry, Corstian. I think you cut out a little bit with the audio there. So just to summarize, I think from what I got from you is that we're going to see a lot of like, what James Cook could provide in like spurts when he wasn't getting the touches. But for like Ray Davis, whereas like James Cook is now producing like a full-time starter, expected to handle like 12 to 15 carries of the workload. And then Ray Davis will give you like the efficient touches, but not like 5 to 7, not like more than 7 carries a game, whatnot, unless it's like a blowout or something. So
yeah.
Yep. So sorry about that, guys, with the viewership. We're working on it. We're trying to get the quality better. Cool. One thing for the coaching staff I just want to outline was obviously the offensive coordinator. It's now Joe Brady for a full year. I think that's going to make a huge difference for this team. I'm really a fan of Joe Brady's offense in general, going back to like what he did with LSU. I just think he provides you with a lot of answers as a quarterback. So like I think you're still going to see peak Josh Allen. I don't think Josh Allen's going anywhere. I think it was more like I don't think Ken Dorsey was the right fit for what the team needed, and I think Joe Brady's that guy. So that's my guy to keep an eye on for this upcoming season to see if he can repeat it, because it's largely going to be on the offense again. Still there?
Able to see too much of the coaching stuff, for this week stuff, scheduling and stuff. So, I agree. Joe Brady's kind of the big move here, but yeah, nothing too much extra to add on for me there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Corstian, I think we're starting to get like the cutouts again, from your side of it. So, if you just want to switch to like data or Wi-Fi, if you're able to, that'd be good. We can move on to the Miami Dolphins in the meantime, while Corstian's getting situated here. So, started off hot. This team proved that they can pretty much run roughshod in any team in the league throughout the first half of the season. Then we noticed, as the season waned, they started to tail off a little bit. A couple injuries on that side of the field for their offense. Lots of massive defensive losses, like as the season waned. So it was tough on them. And then they lost the division to the Buffalo Bills every last week of the season. ended up being a huge difference because they ended up having to go to Kansas City on the road in like one of the most extreme cold weather games we've seen in the playoffs. And the team wasn't built to play that way because they're built through Tagovailoa, Waddle, Hill, and the speed element from the run game with Mostert um, and Achan and what Jeff Wilson could do. So we clearly saw like the Dolphins needed like a different variable on offense. So Corstian, if you're still there, um,
Mhm.
taking a look at the outlook for the Miami Dolphins, where do you see their floor and ceiling?
um, yeah, with their floor, it's tricky. Like, I think it's probably my lowest would be like maybe 9-ish wins. I still think that they're a strong contender here, but then I think their ceiling is higher than the Bills and could be around like 14 wins with just how electric they can be.
Wow, that's a strong projection there. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm probably gonna keep them around with where the Bills are too, and say 9 to 12 wins. Um, but probably on the lower side of the Bills. Um, I it's gonna depend on how their adjustments end up working out. Because they do have the same schedule as the Bills as far as like facing the AFC South, obviously. And then they got Green Bay to deal with, then they got Cleveland, San Francisco. Um, so there's like a hodgepodge of like it depends on how they finish from week 13 onward, because from week 13 to 18 is an absolute gauntlet for them. They have like Green Bay, the Jets twice, the Texans, the 49ers, and then the Browns. And we know how good the Browns were on defense in December in Cleveland. So that's going to be a very tough game. If they can finish that season 500 or better, I feel really confident that they can hit the high end of my ceiling that I have for them. But if they don't, if they finish below 500, I could easily see them with 9 wins on the year. So that's why I have them where I'm at.
Hmm. Yeah, and that makes sense. I see where you're coming from there.
Um, alrighty. So forgot to mention probably my second year breakout player for the Bills will be Dalton Kincaid.
Oh yeah.
Um, because my obvious infatuation for him, and then
Hmm.
probably the X factor for me would be James Cook, just because of what he did last year and the impact he has on the team. But of course, Sam, if you want to quickly list those out, I completely forgot on that, but
Hmm.
all good.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I say my second year breakout is also going to be Dalton Kincaid. It's hard to say anyone else. I mean, Osiris Torrance is all right, but Dalton Kincaid's the fun one. And then for the X Factor, um, huh, there's like two, which I know isn't technically right, but I'll just go
You
with
can get
one
both
of
of them.
being okay. I have like one on offense, one on defense. One on offense being Khalil Shakir. I've been pretty excited for him throughout his entire couple-year career, and so I'd like to see him kind of be just like a focal point in that receiving game. I think he has that type of potential. And then on the defensive side, AJ Epineza is the guy in Wilkins' production, but obviously they did a lot to try to make up for that. Even they got Calais Campbell too. But yeah, I really like Jordan Poyer, and then I also did like Jonnu Smith. Obviously, he hasn't done super crazy stuff during his career, but I do think that it's an upgrade that will definitely benefit this team, even if it is pretty marginal. And so that was kind of just a small little signing that I was kind of excited for here.
And I think he will be successful too in the Dolphins scheme, because you think about where Jonnu Smith has had the most success. It's
Mm-hmm.
been with Arthur Smith, a guy for however like his reputation has suffered being like Atlanta's head coach. He did a great job putting Jonnu Smith in positions to succeed, like in Tennessee and in Atlanta. Mike McDaniel's the type to do the same thing. Like what
Mm-hmm.
Jonnu Smith does well is like run after catch, and he has a little bit of toughness to him, so that helps. Um, but for what Mike McDaniel wants to do is the run after catch offense and setting up his guys to have a runway basically and use their speed and athleticism. I think this is a great area for John Smith to land. So that's a cool call there. Um,
Mhm.
as far as their draft picks, bringing it up here, it's kind of a mix of things. Like they started off with Chop Robinson, which was nice because they're not sitting on their
Mhm.
laurels with the edge rusher. And then I'm not gonna lie, um, they s- I was struggling to wonder why they picked Jalen Wright. That was like a weird spot for me because that was like in my head. I was like, the Dolphins are not the team I would expect to pick Jalen Wright. He's he's a great fit for their offense, but like the way their depth chart is, it's like he's like the third or fourth string back right now.
Mhm.
And they just drafted Achan, so it's just like I wonder where they're
Mhm.
going with this. But then I really like the Mo Camara picks. So, and obviously the receivers, both Washingtons, I think, are going to
Mhm.
do really good things for this team. So like very largely positive, but like there are a couple of odd picks in there where it's just like, what are you doing, Dolphins?
Mhm. Yeah, I was scratching my head at Jalen Wright too. Um, I feel like he feels like he has a similar play style to the other three main running backs on this team right now. With him, I mean, like I don't want to say he's like just a speed guy, but like his strength definitely comes in from his just kind of straight line speed. At least in my own personal opinion. So you got Raheem Mostert, he's a really fast guy. You got A-Chain, who's a fast guy. Jalen Wright, who's pretty fast, and then Jeff Wilson, he's like fast. He's like a tier below the, I think, the other guy's speed, but like he's still, I'd consider him to be a fast type running back build, you know. And so uh, it was a big. It was. I think he could be. He probably will play good knowing this offense, but I think he could have done well with other teams that could definitely benefit from this type of skill set that he has. Yeah, yeah. So that's yeah. But I did like Chop Robinson, especially last season. You know, you lose or season I don't remember, but Bradley Chubb, he got hurt, and then they signed him to the. He has like the mega deal. He hasn't necessarily played, I think, as great as you want. I think he's decent at run stop, but then I feel like you can never have enough edge rushers, especially with how pivotal they are to teams. And so maybe I was cutting out there. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, Chop Robinson's another guy that I was
Yeah,
excited.
just a little bit, but I think we got you on
Mhm.
the right track, so we're
Uh-huh.
okay.
Yeah.
Quickly pivoting to the coaching staff, um, they s- largely the coordinators have stayed the same except for the defensive end.
Mhm.
So I have no qualms with their offense. I think they'll be um, good again this year.
Mhm.
Their defense is I have no idea what to expect because if you look at the coordinators here, it's like they got Anthony Weaver, they got Joe Barry. Anthony Weaver comes from a good system, but like Joe Barry is facing a lot of criticism for how he handled Green Bay's defense last couple of years. And then you
Mhm.
got Matt O'Donnell. He is, I believe, is related to Ed O'Donnell. He used to be like a special assistant to the Bears, and then I think he was the defensive coordinator for the Broncos. So you have a lot of different lineages like coming together in this like hodgepodge of a defense. So I don't know how how to rate this defense right now, solely because they moved on from Vic Fangio. So
Mhm.
it's like, oh, okay. What's how's their defense gonna look? So that's gonna be my X factor. I'm kind of cheating here by giving like a defensive unit slash coaching staff, but
Mhm.
that's really the unit I'm watching here. Can they play in the cold? Can they play in tough conditions? Can they play in a grimy game where they can't win 70-20? Sorry to open up that wound one more time, but like if they can't win in that style, um, how else can they win? Can they win in other ways? So I want to see if the defense can play in environments like that. So
Mhm.
for me, that's the one coaching point thing that stands out to me.
Mhm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of how this defense looks post Vic Fangio. Um, I do know that there are like some concerns about Fangio, and that's why I mean, in terms of like how his defense works in the today's NFL. I know even just a couple of years ago, Fangio, he's one of the, his like he was one of the best. I still think that he can call a good defense. I mean, we've seen him call a couple good defenses this last year, but I know like his like defensive strategy is kind of like what teams have been trying to scheme against as of the past couple seasons. And so I think
It's because everybody's trying to get his disciples on different teams and stuff. So if you see it a bunch of times, then you're like, oh, we have to find a counter to this.
Yeah, and so I think it makes sense to move on from Fangio, but yeah, like you said, it is a hodgepodge of guys here, and so it'll be interesting. But I think it can be for the better, especially just with how many new additions they have on this defense. It's kind of like they gave an opportunity to kind of reform the defense while still keeping a lot of star players that they already had.
Yeah, for sure. Who's your X factor on the team?
My X factor, honestly, I'd say Tua Tagovailoa, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he played phenomenally last year. I think he can play better, is what like my own personal opinion is, and so I think, yeah, it's like obviously the circumstances of the playoffs game against the Chiefs was very unfavorable and unfortunate for the Dolphins here, but I think that Tua's just got to play better. I think he has the potential to keep up with the Chiefs and the other top teams in the AFC, and so I'd like to see him more consistent, and so I think that's why I have him as my X factor, even though I feel like I see a lot of quarterbacks are the X factor, especially for I think last time I think we had a lot of quarterbacks, but I think he is it for me here.
Yeah. I just looked at your depth chart. I do not see Von Miller on there. So when I was deciding for an X factor, I'm like, is he still on the team? But I think he's still in recovery, right? So, yeah, I feel like. Oh wait, no, that's the Bills. Sorry, ignore me. Ignore me. I saw Bradley Chubb. I'm like, whoa, secondary. Okay, but yeah, I think it's probably going to be Bradley Chubb for me. Like, how does he fare coming off of injury? Like yeah, you want to see like the other edge rushers, and you lose Christian Wilkins. So it's like, oh, where's that front four pass rush coming from? And it's going to come from largely these guys. So he's my X factor. My second year breakout player is probably Devon Achane. Like the way he exploded off the scene last year and like limited touches. If he gets a full workload, I think he can manage it. I really think he can in the scheme. But yeah, I would not be surprised if like they try to keep him in the same role and just limit his touches just to preserve his health. So not great options, but like you look at their other second year players like Cam Smith and like another guy buried on the depth chart. So very hard to see breakouts there. It's possible we could see from Cam Smith, but I'd rather take my chances on Achane here.
Yeah, I think realistically we're going to see that jump from Achane too. It's kind of disappointing for Cam Smith. I know he was high on a lot of boards last year, and obviously he was taken pretty high with pretty good draft capital last season, and so obviously I hope that he does better. But realistically, I think Achane, if he can continue to be elite, I don't realistically see the 7-8 yards per carry being a consistent thing, but obviously every time he has the ball in his hands, he's pretty elite. And I know that they talked about having him in the slot again this season, because I think last season he had about like 20 to 30% of his on-field playing time was from the slot position. And so, I think just expanding his role in this offense will do wonders for them.
Okay. Cool. New York Jets. I feel like 4 plays in, their season was written off completely. And I know they had like a couple of runs up here and there, and they finished off the season on a strong, semi-strong note, like 7 wins. Like really wouldn't expect that out of the situation they were dealt with. They did a complete overhaul of everything they did wrong in previous seasons this season. And I have really high hopes for this team. I look at their schedule, Corstian, and honestly, they probably have the largest variance out of any team I'll most likely have this season.
Mhm.
I could see them finish anywhere from like 8 wins to 14 wins. That's my
Mhm.
floor and my ceiling. Um, and this is assuming Rodgers is healthy. I think
Mhm.
if Rodgers gets hurt, I think like all bets are off. But I find it hard with the quarterbacks they have now, like on the depth chart, that they won't get to 8 wins even if Rodgers is hurt. It's really a testament to the
Mhm.
talent that this team has accumulated and their favorable schedule as a result.
Mhm.
I think their schedule is really, really favorable considering all
Mhm.
things. And there's not many things. There's maybe like 5 or 6 matchups I have to worry about with this team outside of the division,
Mhm.
and their defense is already loaded. We know that, so I feel confident that they could hit double digit wins. But I could also see a scenario where they massively disappoint. So, um, hence the large variance there.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I had a pretty large variance as well. Not quite as large, but mine was a 7-win floor and a 12-win ceiling. Um, that being, it's like even if Rodgers is fully recovered, just due to the nature of the injury, it's like, will he be playing at the level he was at before? But then also, it's like literally anything other than or anything outside of what they had last season is pretty much an improvement from the quarterback position. And so even, you know, Rodgers is like at 60%. That's still like 100% better than I think what quarterback
Agreed.
play they were dealing with last season.
Agreed.
Like it's kind of giving fine like uh, Peyton Manning's last season, where it's like I think they have enough good pieces on the team, plus Rodgers is just a smart enough quarterback that even if he isn't back to himself, he can still at least manage and run the offense here. Um, and so that's why, I mean, 7 wins, things just go awry. Everything's awful. But even if he isn't doing great, I still think that a bad Rodgers can bring this team to a plus, like a 10 double-digit win season, which just, their quarterback play was awful last year. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
then, yeah,
mean,
like you said, I
like
really like this.
how far worse can it get? Like, I don't think it's gonna get worse than it did last year.
Mhm. Yeah, like only I think maybe they brought like Kenny Pickett in or something. Like I would have been like, oh, maybe not, but. But yeah, I really like Tyrod Taylor. I feel like in his little bits of playtime with the Giants last season, he impressed. Obviously, he got hurt, which sucked, but I think he played good. And then I really like them getting Jordan Travis, who obviously isn't a year one starter kind of guy, but he's a potential project guy that they could throw in here and there if an injury does happen, and I think he'd be serviceable. Um, but yeah, and then just overall, I think I really like the additions that they brought, just via draft, free agency, and everything like that.
Yeah, speaking of which, like there's 3 or 4 that stand out to me, like Chuck Clark, Tyron Smith, Mike Williams, Javon Kinlaw was probably my favorite one
Mm-hmm.
that they've added in there because just imagine him next to Quinnen Williams, like running
Mm-hmm.
roughshod. Like he is basically the Aaron Donald now of the NFL now that he's
Mm-hmm.
retired. And then you add Kinlaw to that, like that's just it's screaming like um, San Francisco 49ers East right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of those additions are going to be good. Mike Williams is actually my X factor of this offense. I
Mm-hmm.
think however well he produces, the entire offense is going to skyrocket because we already know about what Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson can do and what Aaron Rodgers is capable of hitting post Achilles injury. And if you just throw Mike Williams in the mix, like that's something they did not have last season either. It was just like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times I was getting frustrated watching like Alan Lazard and like Randall Cobb and like all these like guys that are well past their prime and not like very scheme dependent options getting thrust into roles where they had to be relied on. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
nah, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. So, um, I think for me, like these free agency additions were like they made a lot of splashes, but the splashes they made were very depth heavy and in consideration. And Tyrod Taylor
Mm-hmm.
was probably the biggest move here. I think
Mhm.
he's easily the best. Like they made up their mistake for letting Mike White go, and I think this is a great move to solidify that.
Mhm. Yeah, and then even if Tyrod Taylor doesn't get like any play time, just from like what I've seen from him, he seems like he's a really good mentor type quarterback as well. Where I feel like I always see him, talking with young quarterbacks on the sidelines and just helping, basically being a mini quarterback coach for teams. And so, even if he doesn't play, and maybe Jordan Travis is the future of this franchise, I think that having Tyrod Taylor there is excellent for any quarterback development that they might want to do, which I'm just a really big fan of. But yeah, I think Mike Williams is definitely in there for that consideration for being the X factor. Like looking at this team, I'm like, I feel like a defensive player should be the X factor. I'm just looking at like the defensive players that I'm excited for, but
It's like which one?
It's
like which one?
yeah,
Is
it's
it
like
DJ
which one?
Reed? Is like Sauce Gardner? Yeah.
But then, like, I think about, you think back to last season, and it really is the offense that was holding this team back. And so I feel like it's rightfully so, having an offensive guy be the X factor. I think Aaron Rodgers is a guy you could say is like the X factor, but I think regardless of how Aaron Rodgers plays, this team will be decently successful anyways. And so I like your pick with Mike Williams, and I think I might go with Mike Williams as well as my X factor here.
Copycat. But yeah, I mean, looking at the rest of this team and what they've done, I mean, you lose Bryce Huff, and then you're trying to figure out how to fill that void, and I think they've done a great job with that. Um, and then you add Malachi Corley, and then you're just talking about the quarterbacks here with like Jordan Travis getting the mentorship from Tyrod Taylor, another Jordan under Aaron Rodgers. I think that bodes for good signs for the Jets' future as well. So I'm really high on Jordan Travis as a talent. Sucks that he had that leg injury, and it sucks that Florida State couldn't compete in the college football playoffs because of one of those reasons. So it's like I really root for the guy. I think the Jets quarterback situation as a whole is miles different from what it was last year. It's clear to me that Joe Douglas saw this mistake and it's like, we can't have this happen again. You need to have a backup plan. And he finally has a plan B and C at the quarterback position. And I think because of that, you're going to see a lot more consistency in this team, offensively wise.
Yeah.
Pivoting to their draft picks. Let's see here. So I absolutely love the Fashanu pick. And then I don't know if you knew this, Corstian, but he has the same offensive line trainer as Tyron Smith. And now he's playing behind Tyron Smith. So I think it was Duke Manyweather, and he's a great offensive line coach as a whole. Like he's been mentoring like Mekhi Becton, like all these like athletic freaks of nature that don't know the techniques yet. That was great investment by the part of the Jets, and a clear sign of like, hey, we are not just going to run it back with the same offensive line. We're going to make some adjustments here. Malachi Corley, I actually thought was a great pick for him for the Jets, even though he's not like your prototypical like route running savant. Like I think he gives them a variable that they didn't have with like Garrett Wilson and like Mike Williams, just like from the style. But like Garrett Wilson can do some run after the catch things. Like he's just like your primary route runner burner. Mike Williams is kind of like a contested catch guy, and then you have like Malachi Corley like getting the short flat routes and turning them into like 15-yard, 10-yard completions. So they got their mini Debo Samuel. Braylon Allen kind of surprised me because of the way like Israel Abanikanda played, but I didn't mind the pick. Like it's kind of one of those like, huh? And then they took another running back in round 5, so it's just like, oh. And then Stiggers at cornerback was, I just love that name, so I had to shout that out. Like Quantez Stiggers, that's amazing. That's an amazing name. But I mean, their first run on the draft, I really loved, and I think Joe Douglas has done a phenomenal job this offseason trying to build the support of this team for Aaron Rodgers and for a great defense as a team.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of a cool draft class too. Obviously, I was pretty high on Malachi Corley going into this. But yeah, I thought both the running back picks were pretty interesting. And I think this says more about how they view Israel Binaconda. Like going into last season, I was pretty high on him. I think if you go back, to a year ago from now or a year ago, yeah, I was hyping up Israel Binaconda. I think a lot of people were really high on him, but I guess they just didn't necessarily like too much of what they had with him, and so it, I guess convinced them to draft two other running backs. Obviously, we don't know how this will look out. Like day one or week one final depth chart will probably be slightly different than what we're seeing right here on the current depth charts. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. But overall, I think Malachi Corley was my favorite guy here. And like you said, I think he fits a really like a niche good spot for them that their other guys didn't currently offer as well as he does.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was going to touch on the coaching staff, but not much has changed on that front. So they're still under Nathaniel Hackett, and they're still under Greg Olbrich as a coordinator. So still have Salah as the head coach. So I'm not going to talk about them on this podcast, just for the standpoint of like they're pretty much running it back. It's just the talent on the roster is changing. So
yeah,
if anything, it's all eyes is on Hackett. It's like you better perform with this talent now. Like the personnel is a lot better, a lot better. So that's probably the only thing I'll add there. My second year breakout player for me is Xavier Gibson, undrafted last season. He busted onto the scene second half of the year especially, and now he's like getting some starter reps in camp. So we could potentially see a trio where like Corley might not see the field to start the season, and it's just Gibson, Williams, um, and Wilson, and I really like that. He's undersized, but like he gives you that little like Golden Tate energy, like little Deshaun Jackson. He has a little bit of both in this game. Quick twitch guy. So like he could play outside, but I think he'd be more effective in the slot. He can make his quick movement standpoint. So like I think he's due for a breakout season. Like I think Garrett Wilson's primed for 1,400 yards with a peak Aaron Rodgers. But like if I'm looking for one guy to break out from year one to year two, for me it's Xavier Gibson.
Yeah. For me, I think I'd like to see a bit more step up from Will McDonald. He was their first round pick last season. Obviously, they got guys ahead of him, and I understand why they're ahead of him. And so that's why I want him to do better. But yeah, I think even if like because of the guys ahead of him, I'm not expecting him necessarily to have a double-digit sack season. But I think I would like to see him, as he's rotated it in, to continue, just to be better than what he was last season and really create a spot for himself in the next upcoming seasons.
That's fair. 100% fair. All right. Last team that we're going to go through. It's the New England Patriots. Absolute dumpster fire of a season. Just to put it nicely. Made a lot of changes in the future. Gerard Mayo is the new head coach. I think this team, based on what they did in the draft especially, is going to look a lot better. But what are your floors and your ceilings for this team?
My floor is probably like 4 or 5 wins, and then my ceiling is maybe around 9 wins. That sound about right with you?
I mean, I don't know why I'm looking at their schedule right now because it's really they're kind of in the weird spot where it's like first year quarterback, and the schedule's not half bad, but you do have the Bengals mixed in there, and like and then you got the Texans, the Dolphins, the 49ers. Like their first half of the schedule, like I could see them struggle all the way until the start of November. So I'll probably agree with you on that ceiling and floor. I didn't really have one listed for this team, but 4 to 9 wins sounds about right, and it might be lower. It could be there could be a lot of growing pains with this team, for sure. As far as like the new additions and free agency, I loved the Jacoby Brissett
Mhm.
signing. I think
Me
was
too.
good. I saw you flag Mac Jones as a key loss. He got traded to the Jaguars.
Yeah.
But I don't really know. Like, I think at that point it was like a necessary loss. I wouldn't call it key exactly. With
Yeah,
all
that's
due
why I added a
respect.
question mark because I'm like, is it really?
Yeah, dang. And then I also like the Osborne signing. The Osborne signing was a really,
uh,
really good one for the team because like Osborne's a good receiver,
mhm,
and the Patriots pretty much didn't have like any proven good receivers. So like,
mhm,
um, it's a nice like he could play, he could be the starter like
mhm,
next to Demario Douglas like and amongst their other like draft signees and like Keyshawn Butte
mhm,
and then yeah I mean Taki's probably the other guy
mhm,
that's going under the radar. But those are the three that stand out to me. And then while I'm looking at it, Gibson was also a nice ad because
mhm,
it gives them a lot more flexibility with like behind Ramondre Stevenson. They haven't really
mhm.
had that since like James White. So
Yeah.
um, those are the 3 and 4 that stand out to me. Pretty solid free agency hire.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I like the Jacoby Brissett move too. I think I am really high on Drake May, but I do appreciate that they brought in a veteran who, albeit he's not great, he's been serviceable throughout his career, and so I think that it's a solid move to have here, especially because then you're not needing to rush Drake May in right away. And I foresee this as like a year where Brissett probably starts most of the year, and then if everything seems lost towards the end, you'll start to see Drake May play and kind of for the Patriots to give him some NFL reps, plus kind of see more of what they have with Drake May. And then additionally, I did like a not Demario Douglas, KJ Osborne, uh, and it makes the depth on this team look really nice. Whereas I feel like last season with the Patriots receiver room, it's like I liked Kendrick Bourne and I liked Demario Douglas, but Bourne was hurt for a decent chunk last season, so it was like Douglas plus a bunch of guys who I think are good depth pieces as their starters. Because you have like Juju Smith-Schuster, who was getting a lot of starting reps last year, didn't do much with it. Tyquan Thornton's always been just a huge what if kind of guy. Jalen Rager is kind of just been like whatever, but like those guys are seeing a ton of first team reps, and so
There are a lot of
uh,
burners who can't do not much else from like the route running standpoint. So
mhm.
they're very limited in the route tree.
Yeah, and so yeah, just having KJ Osborne as your potential fourth or fifth guy on the team, I think that's a really good just addition for the depth and potential development of Drake May.
Like you have a wide receiver 2 or 3, like in his talent level. Like he can
Mm-hmm.
play on the starting lineup, which is really nice. Like they didn't have much of that. They had a lot of guys that have a niche skill set. But
Mm-hmm.
KJ Osborne gives you a little bit of everything,
Mm-hmm.
which is nice. Um,
Mm-hmm.
while we're on the topic of the roster, I think second year breakout has to be Christian Gonzalez. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I think he's due for one standout corner that they took in the first round last season. Got hurt towards the beginning of the middle of the year, and that's really the start of like all the injuries the Patriots face. But he's
Mm-hmm.
my second year player. My breakout, um, and it's hard to. I'm not gonna give this to a rookie. Like I feel like it's way too easy to just
Mm-hmm.
give it to a rookie here. But I'm gonna say Antonio Gibson, and here's why. I feel like with the way like Drake May plays, Gibson's gonna see a lot of receptions out of the backfield, and so will Stevenson. But
Mm-hmm.
like, I think Gibson just gives you a guy that you can flex out to wide receiver. And I don't know if you want to do that with Ramondre so much, where he's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like just this like Swiss Army knife. And I think he's gonna be the guy that kind of dictates like the ceiling of this team on what they can do offensively.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna say Gibson's my X factor here.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think those are good picks. I think, yeah, for my second year guy as well, I think Christian Gonzalez is a solid pick for that too. I think a close second would have been like Demario Douglas. He kind of broke out of nowhere last season, and he really surprised a lot of people. He's an exciting guy to watch. But I think my X factor, hmm, uh, Like, I don't even know, man. Who could it be? I mean, like, I think Matthew Judon could be the X factor. He was kind of the superstar of the defense last season, and so obviously I'd like to see him continue this kind of being a superstar trend. Because I know he's 31ish, maybe 32, and so obviously this is around the time where you might start seeing these edge rushers decline a bit. And so obviously I want to see him continue to be good, and I think he really elevates just the quality that this defense is.
And then while you're on that defense, I'll probably say Christian Barmore might be. He's probably a close second for me, just because of what he can do from the interior.
Yeah.
And like he can probably raise the ceiling of that defense as well. A lot of hurt pieces there, but I mean, speaking of draft picks, I'm not really a fan of Drake May. Like if you saw the mock draft, I had a lot of questions about his footwork and like decision making, like tied to his footwork. It's stuff that can be corrected in the right scheme and coach, but I think like as if he goes to a situation where, and we don't know too much about like how Gerard Mayo likes to teach, but I like to think the Patriots organization does things the right way. So like for like Drake May in particular, if he's gone to a toxic situation for a team, it's really hard for him to like succeed. But I think this is a good setup for the way they built their roster around him. So for the Patriots specifically, I think this was a good selection. I thought they should have gone Penix here just because of his talent level. But like I understand why they went with May, given like the other draft pick selections. Oftentimes when we see this, we see the first round pick, and it's just like we're looking at the talent itself. But when you look at the rest of the draft picks, it kind of tells the whole story about what this offense is going to be. Like Jalen Polk, love that pick because he was a great receiver at Washington. Washington like seemingly created like great offensive pieces out of nowhere. But obviously Adunze, obviously Penix, continuing his great play from Indiana to Washington, and then you had like Jalen Polk and then McMillan as well. So like a lot of great talent and wait for the Patriots to nab that. And then I'm also a fan of Javon Baker. So I love both of their wide receiver selections. I thought, especially for the Patriots, it was a position that they needed to hit on well, and then they have Keishawn Butte as well to supplant. So they have a very good young nucleus of receivers. And I don't think I'd be saying this about the Patriots. So love that. And then I also love the Joe Milton pick. Like, go ahead, like double dip there. Like he has a lot of talent. Like it's different from any other quarterback that they have on the roster. Like he probably has the best arm out of all these quarterbacks on the roster, including Drake May. So like he gives you something that Zappy or Brissett couldn't add, and he's a nice like insurance policy in case like Drake May is not who we all thought to be, because there's so much of untapped talent with Milton. He just needs to be in a situation where he can sit and develop and grow the right way as a professional. So I actually like that pick for like where the team was headed. So like I think their draft strategy was like sound. They double dipped in a lot of positions of skill, but they double dipped in the right positions on what was the right need for them. So I really love their draft class.
Yeah, I was a pretty big fan of their class too. Me personally, I'm pretty high on Drake May. I think the issue of his footwork is an easier thing to deal with than I think a lot of the other issues that I see from other rookies that enter the NFL.
And I didn't realize I had this on the New York Jets the entire time.
But yeah, and so in regards to that footwork issue, that's why I'm glad they got Jacoby Brissett to give him time to develop. But I like that. I like Jalen Polk. He's like Jalen Polk's in a position where he doesn't necessarily need to be the guy right away either, which I think is pretty nice for them. But yeah, it wasn't too much that they did, but I think they made smart picks just kind of across the board here.
Yeah. As far as like coaching staff, there's a lot of changes here with Gerard Mayo, Alex Van Pelt, as an offensive coordinator, and then DeMarcus Covington. I don't know too much about like what Covington brings. I know they still have a Belichick in the coaching staff as well with Brian Belichick,
Mhm.
of course in the corners I think. So we'll I'll learn a lot more as I watch the regular season games, like
Mhm.
what this team is about. But I would feel like Jerod Mayo would still carry a lot of Belichick principles and how to play
Mhm.
the Patriot way. I think he'll have a large stand like how the defense plays. Being he's been on the team, he knows that side of the
Mhm.
ball better. Um, but Alex Van Pelt I really like because I think he's a good pairing with Drake May. Alex
Mhm.
Van Pelt's seen a lot of different quarterbacks. Um, he's worked with a lot of different quarterbacks in Cleveland himself. So he's been with the number one overall pick. He's been with like the talented quarterbacks. He's been with like um quarterbacks with like just physical insane traits. And he can adapt his offense to fit any scheme. He can go to run heavy depending on the talent level. So like I really like Ramondre Stevenson's chances this year
Mhm.
in this offense. Um, and I really like the receivers they have. I really like Douglas's chances,
Mhm.
Henry's chances in their offense. I think there's going to be a lot more offensive consistency in system. There might be some growing pains in the first 4 games of this season, but I think the back half is definitely one to watch for this team. Like if you're needing of a nice starter play, like I don't think avoid all Patriots
Mhm.
is a sound strategy here because I think Alex Van Pelt brings like a steady system, and I think that will help Drake May get better and better as the season goes along. So when the second half hits, you're going to see a lot of production um, out of guys like Douglas, Stevenson,
Mhm.
Henry. So um, I'm really excited about what the offense can do this year for the Patriots because of that guy being offensive coordinator. I think he'll bring a lot of things he learned from Kevin Stefanski's scheme. I think it'll help out.
Mhm. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Overall, yeah, I think that they're heading in the right direction. Um. Yeah, and then obviously with a new head coach, a lot of coaching staff changes do happen. So like you said, we can't, we won't really fully know until the season starts with how everything will mesh together. But um, I don't know. It's kind of fun just to see seemingly a full rebuild kind of start with this team, which I don't think they were necessarily ready for the past couple seasons. I think, especially with Belichick, they felt like they were really close still. And so I think this is like this new era of team is kind of embracing the suck right now and could be good in the next couple of years, which I mean,
Yeah,
I
this
would
is
be happy
definitely
for.
a team where like year 2 or year 3 is like, oh, now all these guys have a year of experience. They're gonna be a lot better for it, and it's like we
Mm-hmm.
can have a better idea of like where their ceiling is. But
Mm-hmm.
this it's gonna be some growing pains for all Boston fans here. Not that they need any of it. They just got an 18th banner from the Celtics, so like, um, yeah, some parity across all sports. I think like since like 2000, the amount of championships that city has won has been ridiculous. Like between the Bruins, the Red Sox, the Patriots, obviously, and then now the Celtics with their
Mm-hmm.
18th banner. It's yeah. I mean, you better embrace the suck, Boston. Like this is a rarity. Like that you're ever in this situation. So
Mm-hmm.
I am not sympathetic at all. But all joking aside, I think I could be wrong with Jake May. I mean, after all, like the draft really doesn't matter from the standpoint of where you get picked. It's about like what environment you go to. And
Mm-hmm.
if the Patriots become a really good environment for quarterback development, all this talk about, oh, I don't think Drake May should have been a third overall pick, it doesn't matter because of the situation he walked himself into. So yeah, should be a fun team to watch
Mm-hmm.
as far as like where they develop and like what their potential is like in the future. But um the future is now. As far as I'm concerned, I see the Bills or the Dolphins winning this, but don't rule out the Jets. I think it's going to be a three-headed
Mm-hmm.
horse race to the end. I think it'll be a lot tighter than people think, but we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Apologies about the technical difficulties along the way. Um, you can follow us on our Instagram page at amon.a.mission down below. And then There you go, Corstian. And then you could also follow us on our YouTube channel at Amon Mission. That's 3 words, no dots in between. Thank you guys so much. We will see you next week, and we will touch on the NFC East and what's up with the Cowboys and can the Eagles rebound and what are the Giants doing? And I'm really excited about the Washington Commanders. So tune in for that and see you later.
Peace.